Now let's take a look at some of the extra areas on the flight log. On the front page, one of the biggest areas that stands out is the ADM section. Remember, ADM is Aeronautical Decision Making. So this is where we document any hazards that would pose a risk to the safety of our flight. This section should not be used for theoretical hazards, only for things that have actually come up or may come up on this particular flight. For example, if you were preparing this flight log and you were worried because you had developed a little sniffle last night, you might put under the pilot, the place is your health, the hazard is you might get congested. The risk of congestion is that it could be painful, provide a distraction, give you some inhibited ability to have your inner ear working correctly, and you may get disoriented more easily. So you need to figure out the likelihood and the severity of that particular risk. Once you've figured out the likelihood and the severity, low, medium, or high, let's say that there's a medium likelihood and a high severity. This would now be a high risk. So your mitigation needs to be able to account for that. And your mitigation could be that you're not going to fly. Remember, the TEAM acronym tells you what to do. You can transfer, eliminate, accept, or mitigate a risk. One way to mitigate it might be to take an FAA-approved medication that can help deal with your congestion. Another example would be under the aircraft. Let's imagine that the navigation lights were out. So the place is the nav lights. Correction, the place would be the pre-flight. The hazard would be that the nav lights are out. The risk is low if you're going on a day flight, and the severity is low. Your mitigation would be to land before sunset. Your environment, there could be a convective sigma en route, so the place would be en route. The hazard would be a convective sigma. The risk could be medium, depending on what your weatherman says. The severity would be high. So your strategy could be to wait until later to fly, not fly at all, take a different route of flight entirely, any number of things. But use this section to help you identify anything that's wrong along your flight and what you're going to do about it. A few other sections to look at are the airport information pages. You can look at your departure airport, and much of that information can be found on the sectional chart. However, most of it will probably be found here in the chart supplement. For example, your identifier is KGMU. The field elevation is 1,048. Traffic pattern altitude, according to this, is 1,800 feet. Your ATIS information is found underneath the frequencies here under weather data sources, 127.075. Clearance delivery. There's no dedicated clearance delivery frequency, so we use ground control, 121.25. Ground is 2125, tower is 119.9, approach is 118.8, CTAF is 119.9 when the tower closes. The nearest flight service station you can find on here or on the map. default is 122.2. According to the chart, the Greer RCO on 122.65 should be close. And then you can find the current temperature, which we said was 15 degrees Celsius, and the current wind speed and direction. Is 230 at 8 knots. That results in a 5-knot headwind and a 6-knot crosswind. And then we can draw the miniature airport. We would do our estimated direction of departure, probably runway heading off of 19er, and we would do the same thing for our destination airport. We also have a spot to copy down weather information, unless you get it in another form besides a phone briefing, and a spot to copy down your flight plan information unless you file that electronically.